Meeting to order, and I believe Michael is going to do the invocation for us today.
I am, thank you. I'm going to actually read a version of the Serenity Prayer today. It's often used in recovery models, but they usually just go to the first paragraph. A lot of people don't know that the original Serenity Prayer was developed right here in Michigan by Reinhold Niebuhr, a theologian that was actually a pastor in a church in Detroit, and is really famous, by the way, of the integration of theology and psychology to ensure that there's a moral foundation to that type of care. And there's a lot of angst in our environment right now. Always has been, by the way, but people are concerned about what's happening at the federal level. People are concerned of what's happening at the state level. People are concerned what's going to happen in their own homes. We're concerned about our system. We're concerned about the people that we have the honor of serving. So I thought it would be fitting to remind ourselves what's in our control and what's not in our control. So I'd like to read this prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, taking, as he did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, I should mention that we are celebrating Memorial Day, or honoring Memorial Day would be probably a better word. And perhaps some of you have lost a family member in service to our country, or you know of families that have. And we should be especially mindful of the price that many men and women have paid over the years to ensure our freedoms that we enjoy every day. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our mission statement and our vision statement are listed in the minutes, and I'll just ask you to reflect on them at your leisure. We're now open for public comments. Please address the board with your name and your area of residence, and try to limit yourself to 3 minutes if you can. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Marshall Head, and this is my son, Mark. We live in Park Township. I want to thank Dr. Bashirs and the board for the good and faithful work you're doing in Ottawa County. This means so much to us. My wife and I were 18 when we married, and we have cared for Mark, the baby of our family, since he was born, more than 51 years ago. Since my wife was diagnosed with cancer in 2019 and passed 3 years ago, I have become Mark's caregiver. It's just the two of us and one aging dog. I will be 91 years old in July and am generally in good health. And even though I love him dearly, I may not always be able to adequately care for Mark. He needs round-the-clock support, including bathroom and bathing assistance, feeding and dressing. Mark and I worship every Sunday evening at the Church of Benjamin's Hope. It's hard to decide what that experience is for us. It's not just church. It's belonging, and it's where Mark and I are welcomed and fully included. Hopefully, it is obvious how much Mark and I need support. And as the clock is ticking, I want to know that Mark will be cared for when I'm no longer in the picture. When I learned from Mark's support coordinator that he was eligible for Benjamin's Hope and that Benjamin's Hope was willing to serve Mark, I felt my prayers for him had been answered. And now, with an opening at Benjamin's Hope available for Mark in June, I'm respectfully asking and praying that funding will be approved and approved on time. Thank you again for your service and the dignity you provide to Mark and others, and for your time and courtesy to hear from me. God bless you.
Thank you, Marshall. Is there anyone else who would like to comment?
Barbara Lee Van Horsen, the City of Grand Haven, and the Momentum Center. Just want to make everybody aware that we have successfully relocated our Holland Momentum Center. As you know, the space we were in was owned by Community Action House and was sold to the dwelling place for much needed housing. Can't lament that, but it did displace us. We have moved into Central Park Church on Myrtle Avenue in Holland. We're very excited about that collaboration. The church was very intent on inviting us and bringing us in. So they're excited about it. We're excited about the space. There's increased opportunities, a large kitchen, a large gymnasium. I want to invite you to stop by, see the space, get a tour. People are there from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. Occasionally, because of outings, there might not be someone there, so it's a good idea to check our calendar, which is always available online, or give a call just to make sure that we're not at an outing. We currently have 130 members of the Holland Momentum Center alone as of yesterday. So please come out, visit. Again, I thank all of you for your service and your recognition that mental health is a community concern that requires a community response. Thank you for responding.
Are there any other comments? Anyone online? Okay. We'll call the public comments closed and move to the consent agenda. We are looking for a motion to approve the agenda and the minutes of the last meeting.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion or any additions to the minutes? All those in favor of the motion respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And now we will move to presentations.
Okay, I think that's me. I'd like the pleasure of introducing to you 3 of our new directors. We had 2 retirements and a decision to centralize our crisis services programs within Ottawa CMH, in the process to do that, to make sure that all of our crisis teams, crisis services are fully trained and integrated for all populations being served. So you got these bios last time we met, but I'd just like to go through one by one and have that person just kind of stand up at the podium, and if you want to, so you know who they are, and the camera can catch them. Instead of just the bald spot in my head that it always focuses on. Okay, so I'd first like to introduce you to Stacy Hamstra. Stacy, if you could stand there for a moment. Stacy's our new mental health director for IDD Adult Services. And Stacy has been working, over 35 years in the system. Most of that, 24 of those years here at CMH. In fact, I can't find anything in the IDD program that she hasn't done. She's supervised supports coordinators. She's done our quality improvement. She's done you name it, she's done it. Stacy received an undergraduate degree from Hope College and a master's of social work from Grand Valley State University. There's things in the bio that is not listed there, but I'll keep going. Stacy grew up on the east side of Michigan, has been been living in West Michigan since 1986. She has 2 grown children and 3 grandchildren that she adores. She loves to spend time biking, hiking, camping, kayaking with her husband. So I am honored to have Stacy take this position. We have somebody that understands the program, has worked in every aspect of it. And right now, with all of the uncertainty we have with state funding, federal funding, the system trying to change, I thought it was important we have somebody that knows how we operate so that we can set up for where we need to go in the future in that division. So I'd just like to welcome Stacy, and I don't think you want to take questions, but just the board to catch a face with this. And Stacy will be, at some point, we'll have some open houses so folks can come in and meet the new IDD director type thing with all these folks. We'll get those set up in June and July. So welcome, Stacy. All right. Next, I'd like to have the honor of introducing you to Keith Morley. Keith, you get up there. As our new mental health director of adult mental health services. Michelle Vaniscal is retiring this May, and Keith has, been a part of our system for a while, and Keith has had the honor of directing our assertive community treatment team, which is one of the most difficult challenges because to be a member of that particular team, you have to have pretty poor treatment compliance. So it's folks that need people to directly communicate or interact with them in a team model that are not always happy to see you. He's had to navigate that for quite some time. So I'll just read this. Keith initially attended college by becoming a teacher, but discovered 2 semesters before graduating that he did not want to be a high school teacher, but instead he wanted to serve the public sector. Keith considered his options and chose to go into the field of social work. Keith has been in the field for over 15 years and still loves what he does, which is an essential requirement to be a director at Ottawa CMH. Keith has worked in a variety of roles, including crisis worker, access center clinician, and the supervisor of ACT. Keith has spent most of his life in the Holland area. He attended Grand Valley University and earned a bachelor's of sociology and psychology, master's of social work, and public administration. Keith has been married for 22 years and has 2 children, 1 in college and 1 who's a junior in high school. In his spare time, he enjoys fishing a lot and spending time with his wife and children. So I'd like to introduce you to Keith and let you know that, again, it was important that people understood many aspects of our system, access, team models, ACT, and have a passion for the people that we serve. And so I'm honored to present to you our new Director of Adult Mental Health Services, Keith Morley. Thanks, Keith, for taking the position. Yeah. Okay, so Tim Piers. Okay, here we go. This guy, I tell you. Okay, so our new Director of Crisis Services. I'll just read this and I'll tell you some other stuff that he didn't put here. Tim is graduate of Grand Valley University, seeing a trend of social work. After starting his career in the private sector providing crisis intervention services, which, by the way, the private sector is pretty much abandoned, Tim joined the crisis team at CMH of Ottawa County. Since then, he has played a key role in expanding jail-based services and helping to launch the county's crisis intervention team, CIT, and deflection, which you heard a presentation on, diversion and reentry programs. Diversion is diverting people from jail, prison, those things. Tim lives in Zealand with his wife, Bree, and their 2 daughters. In his free time, he enjoys gardening, family camping trips along with the lakeshore, and traveling to anywhere with the museum or national park. We're darn lucky to have these candidates and these people that take them, in Tim's case, he's had to work with sheriff's department, police departments. We are doing stuff in crisis services that nobody else does. We are the safety net. And our crisis services department is the underbelly of that safety net. And in conjunction with the other directors you have met, form a very cohesive system of care that no one can replicate in the private sector. Tim, I'm glad that you've taken this position. You have a big challenge ahead of you as we integrate our crisis services departments and philosophy so that the community has one number with people adequately trained for all populations around the clock to prevent jail, to go into jails. And so we'll be working over the next several months with that integration process of our crisis services, and you'll get a full presentation both at our PQI committee and then the full board. Tim, I want to thank you for taking the position and welcome aboard for this new role.
Thank you.
So as you can see, internal candidates with external experience, with multi-level experience in multiple aspects of our CMH. The director positions, I renamed them director positions, but they're called supervisors before. You know, it's a cross between being a COO in your division, a politician, in a sense of kind of dealing with the different things you have to deal with in the public. And one of the things we're going to be doing with our directors over the next year is giving the community opportunities to meet them and have them more integrated in some of the stakeholder groups that surround CMH, so they don't stay just entirely focused on the divisions that they have to manage. But I'm pleased to provide these individuals to help serve our board. And that's that. Any questions on the presentation?
I just have a question, if you wouldn't mind, if they answer one question.
That's fine, they can, yeah.
Okay, I would just love to know like what their deep hope is for their department, like anything new that they're hoping to
Okay.
to do.
So any one of you can just get up and then fall, each one can fall, yeah. I will note that crisis services stepped up.
Yeah, thank you. I think, I've spent most of my career serving people in crisis, and just to see people in that time of need, I'm so excited to expand what we're doing to just really address that, whether it's families, children, adults, and make our excellent services available to them in their time of need.
I have a strong philosophy of building relationships with people, people in the community, families, providers, and within my own team. I think it's really important to work as a team and to understand each other, have really good communication with each other, because with that, it helps the families that we're serving, and also with the providers. It's been a long time since I've been integrated in with families and providers. I've had a role for the last 8 years. I've just done all the behind the scenes stuff. So I'm very excited to be involved more now with our providers and families. And I really want to build that back up. I used to supervise our supports coordinators, and I had a lot of those relationships back then. And it's grown a ton since I've done that position. We've have so many more providers. So I really want to build those relationships and get to know each other, and really be more involved in the families.
My vision is to continue to provide excellent services for mentally ill adults. I do think we have a good base right now. And as Dr. Brashear said, reaching out into the community and making sure that we are coordinating with the providers and stakeholders out there and making sure they have access to what they need as well.
Thank you.
You want them to answer anything else? That'd be great. It's fine. You'll start seeing a steady stream of our directors at our new committee, Program and Quality Committee, and also full presentations of distinct programs to the full board. So I'm happy that the committee structure that we develop will allow for more in-depth involvement with other folks that are part of the team and analysis of what we're doing. So I think that's going to be a helpful thing. So you'll start to see all of them more and more. I think that's very beneficial for the board to know who's leading, how they're leading, and what we're doing.
Michael has an administrative comment. If we could do an updated table of organization reflecting the new positions, that'd be helpful.
Great. You mean the org chart? That thing, right? It changes all the time. And so there's always a debate. Do you put the actual names or just the position? And I like the names added too. But it does mean every time we have a change, we have to update it and da-da-da-da, which is fine. We will make sure that gets, but just know that it can be a little time because we have new employees coming in and out all the time. And so I know Amanda is on top of it, and we will make sure that we get that changed.
Is that something we could put on the website where we could simply download an updated file?
Yeah, I thought we had a link to it on the website
There's a
already.
link, but it's a PDF that we have to upload to that link every time, so.
Yeah, but we will.
Great.
Yeah. It'd be pretty cool in the future if you could just hover on a name and all the little details about them pop up. You know?
And a picture.
Right, yeah, exactly. So, you know, there's all kinds of IT technological advances and we have to be very careful in the county because of our firewalls and things like that, but in this process, but yeah, we need to move in that direction. So you start matching faces with people and sometimes I know if you're a consumer or client and you don't remember the name and you can get on there and you can, oh, that's the picture. That's who I have to call. Or if I forget too, there's 180 employees. So I think that's a useful suggestion that we'll do. Yeah. Okay. You ready for me to move on to item?
Sure.
Item 8. This is a lengthy item. I'll do my best to be succinct as best I can. As our committee structures emerge, some of this information will be presented all the time in much detail in the committees and then an overview for the full board. Not to replicate what was done, but we'll get to the ability to ask more detailed questions, spend more time on several items that I usually put in my report. And then from there, be able to generate useful things to bring to the full board. So I'm looking forward for that process. So one of the things I started is on a monthly basis coming into the board and showing you the month prior some vital statistics because when I first arrived, and believe it or not, even though I feel I've been here longer, I've only been here for 3 quarters and a little bit. It will be a full year at the end of July. But I had to remind myself of that, like, oh, I've only had like 3 quarters and a little bit worth of data to kind of work with, both financially and from an outcome standpoint. And I think we're moving better in terms of reporting. And so one of the things I wanted to make sure that the community already knew is how we're handling crisis and kind of like access every month. And so for crisis contacts for April, we had 99. That's individuals that had contact with our crisis system. And what we're looking at is what percentage of those crisis contacts led to an inpatient hospitalization or some other form of diversion or step down. And so when you read this, it says we had 99 folks, 73% did not result in inpatient stay, 27 did. And our benchmark is we want to keep it around 25% or lower in terms of our hospitalization rate. So we were a little higher. We had a little bit higher volume this month. I didn't put the year-to-date totals. I'll make sure we have those moving forward right under them. So you can say that means year-to-date, this is what we're looking at. And so where do people go, right? And so 27 went for an inpatient. We had several folks, 13% go to crisis residential. Those are special programs that you actually have to have the hospital criteria to get in, but you have to be voluntary, and you can't have the level of suicidality at the same severity as you would in an inpatient setting. But, you know, Michigan has a crisis residential system that allows us to say, not the hospital, but this other program that has similar services. Our Robert Brown Center, for instance, is that. kind of program, and it's a good diversion from hospitalization. It's less of a cost, and you can get pretty much connected and reintegrated back to our program quicker that way. So that we use that. Partial hospitalization, just so people know, it's like a traditional hospital program, but you don't stay overnight. You go during the day. And you can't obviously require 24-hour observation, but sometimes people need more than their outpatient therapy, and they don't need the hospital, and they're not in a crisis to be in a residential setting. So they go to the Holland Hospital's partial program, which is, happens during the day, 5 days a week. And we like to say, can we have them go there versus that? It gets a little confusing when you read some of the graphs here on step downs. So what does a step down mean? That means if somebody was in the hospital and at discharge, they went to crisis residential. And we're starting to record those percentages of how many people no longer need that hospital stay, but can go to a partial hospital stay or a crisis residential. So those other services are there to prevent hospitalization, but then once somebody's in, they can step down to those programs instead of an extended stay in the hospital. I mean, Holland Hospital gives us a good rate in our hospitalization rate. They give us the best rate than any other hospital contract we have. But hospitalization can cost up to $1,500 a day, depending on the hospital you go to. Holland doesn't charge us that. We have a strong partnership with that. So we're glad to have that in our area. But what we do with folks in crisis, every one of those crisis contacts has a potential for hospitalization. So one thing that we do as a CMH that the private sector does not do is this. All of these options. If you're in a private therapy office, they say, go get evaluated for the hospital or not. There isn't a crisis residential program. There isn't our crisis staff to intervene. So they work very hard to help people in the greatest needs, and we're only going to improve this service by making sure that all the folks are trained in all of the populations we serve, and we have equal access to crisis for all populations. Right now, if you're an adult with developmental disability, it's almost impossible to get in the hospital. So we have to work on developing another level of care, and that's going to take a while. But I give you these statistics to show you that, 99 crisis contacts, that's more than one a day. It's up to 3 a day if you average it out, all with the potential of hospitalization, and this is what we're doing to address it. Do you have any questions on this report?
Yeah, I do.
Yep.
What is our capacity for crisis residential units in terms of beds and contracts?
We have a couple of contracts. We have, how many beds, Robert Brown? Oh, 6. That's right. Yeah, because I'm prepaying for all of them. I should have known that. We have 6 there. We also have a crisis residential program with a program in Muskegon as well. So it's not a gigantic capacity. It's not like, it's less than 30 beds.
Okay.
Yeah. And as you can see, the idea is the more capacity you build, the more you might utilize them, but only if we can determine the rate of hospitalization and what we need. And so that's why it's important of us to look at how many people actually met the criteria to get in the hospital. Of those, who could have been diverted as a follow-up question.
Yeah, the continuum is really, really important to develop and enrich because we know hospitals make money by being full,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So to have those options and step-down options are really, really important. So that we have a fully integrated option.
Yeah, and I will tell you that the hospital bed situation in Michigan is unbelievably difficult. If you're even talking, one time I'll do a presentation on state hospitals and the state of state hospitals, both at PQI and the board and the community, because it's virtually impossible to get anybody into a state hospital right now. And so if somebody needs more than a local hospital, there's really no resource. And so we're addressing that, and I think that will be a good community presentation, PQI, and here to understand the dilemma we're in. with State Hospital and its impact to this system, the crisis continuum. We have, the next one I like, unless there's another question on this, I'd like to get to the, what's the next one? Because I want to get to, go past this one, and then we'll get the question there. Eligibility, yes.
Just approximately how many individuals do these 99 contacts represent?
In terms of, I believe they're unique.
They are.
I'll double check on that. One might fall in a different category of step down, like started here and went there. There might not be unique in terms of the disposition, but I think that's unique number of contacts. I'll double check that. It's a good differentiating factor because if it's one person going 99 times, that makes a huge difference.
If they were screened for a step down to a partial, or they would have likely been the same person that was screened
Correct.
initially, though.
Yes. So in the dispositions, what happens, there may be duplicative stuff there, but I'll check on if those numbers are unique individuals. One thing I know is unique is eligibility assessments. One of the things that I heard when I first started three and a little bit quarters ago, is that no one gets into CMH. I heard this from multiple spots, and I went, well, let's see about that. Let's go to the numbers. So these are people, it's a valid question, do people get past our screening process before they're eligible for assessment? And I'm collecting that information now. We're moving into a new electronic medical records. I've been waiting for that to come online, which you'll hear in a moment, does in June, to get that number. But I know that last month we had 47 assessments in April, and 79% of them were found eligible for CMH services. And then referred out means to somebody else besides the CMH system, which includes us and our provider network. So the 21% isn't referred to like a contract provider we have. It means weren't eligible for our services, and we found referrals, a place for them to go get services. Our referral process with use of our navigators isn't just pointing and say go, it's walking alongside to make sure they're connected. And that's a huge difference. But you can look at the populations. Hey, this is the first time in several months where somebody didn't get accepted to autism services. That's usually at 100%. It's at 99, okay? Family services, we had 7 that were found eligible. 7 family services, just to remind the public and the board, is under 18 and includes autism in that number. IDD adult had 2 eligible and 1 referred out. MI adult had 14 eligible and 4 out, and you can kind of see the percentages in the bar graph. And one thing this doesn't tell you is, what did they get? So they were in, what services did they actually get authorized? So eventually we'll work on a service authorization report so you can link, just because someone's in CMH, what types of packages of things are we kind of doing, start with, and then how is that impacted by person-centered planning? And so we're on a creative, intelligent design path with this of who's getting in by service division, what's the percentage that's not, and then we look into the 21% why they weren't accepted as well. And so this will get more and more robust over time. But I thought it would be important that you and the public can see every single month, here's who came in the front door, the percentage that were eligible. And, you know, in more of a quarterly report that I'm going to do with PQI committee and the board, you'll see the trends over the quarters and the years and the reasons. So this just gives a general overview of eligibility. Those that got past the screening process and got a formal assessment. So I want to be clear on that, because there could be people out there going, well, wait a minute, I didn't get in. Well, were you eligible after our screening process for an assessment? That makes sense. And so once I get that data, how many people didn't make it through the screening process, I'll bring that to the board's attention. And we'll look at the reasons why and look at solutions for them as well. Because everybody that seeks a service, unless they just have the wrong department, like I'm looking for a chiropractor, we should kind of know within our continuum where they should be and how to land. Does that make sense? Any questions on this report?
Yeah, just, so, you know, I had emailed you on this also. So with Ottawa being a CCBHC, which addresses mild to moderate population, which traditionally would not have met requirements for CMH services, who are the adults that are?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm really kind of looking for, is the data that shows why wouldn't they have been eligible for CCBHC then?
Correct. And so the CCBHC data is not integrated into this report yet.
Okay.
It doesn't show that. And there's going to be a lot of discussion about CCBHC today and over the next several weeks related to who we're supposed to serve, how that interacts with the people that we already serve, and how to differentiate the two population groups based on funding stream, and figure out why these 21, if they're the MI side with the eligibility diagnosis, just weren't enrolled in CCBHC services. And so you're right on the money to notice and indicate this data does not include that. And we will have to do that for sure. We do have specific CCBHC reporting requirements. And once we have that data put together, we'll be presenting it at the PQI committee, then to the full board.
Okay, appreciate it.
Michael, I just want to say thank you so much for really dissecting this, because as this has been one of my biggest things of trying to understand why people get turned away or whatever. So thank you for taking the deep dives. I think we really need to have that data to understand the why. So just thank you.
Yeah. It's always important to educate. It can get, as you board members know, this system is very complex.
Yeah.
You can be on the board for 4 years and still go, what is that again? Right? I've been in the system for 30 years, well, 25, 26 in this state, and I'm like, what is this again? Right? So it needs us, you know, and the public just needs to see this and struggle with us.
Yeah.
Identifying what these things mean.
Just with all the parents that I do talk to, this is the one thing. So to be able to know the data behind it helps me
Yes.
process it with them more too then.
Okay. I'd like to move on to the Lakeshore Link. By the way, a copy of my director's report and outline was emailed to you this morning. I have a practice where I go to my office before this meeting and develop the outline. I used to do it in advance, but so much changes during the week, I literally add stuff the morning of. This will be included in the packet and will be available for the public to see as well, this outline. But just so you know, I've had to utilize that instead of trying to create my director's report in a narrative format and send it in advance. I'm literally, as of yesterday, finding out new information I want to report. So I'm going to an outline form, and you'll also start seeing that I'll take this report and do like an all-staff video and outline of it. Like I'll do a video of myself going through stuff for the staff and the context for them, and it'll be available for you and the public to see as well. So the Lakeshore Link. This is a methodology we use to educate the community about some upcoming things within our CMH. It goes out in the Gov kind of emails thing, and we kind of post it on the website, a link to it and other things that tells you some key activities of it. And what I'm hoping to do in the future is to, if we kind of know what's coming up the next month, have a preview of it. Because we're like in the middle of May, and you might have been like, gee, if I knew this was here, I would have attended this or that, right? But I just didn't know if the board realized, I wasn't reading them myself as close as I should, that we have this Lakeshore Link. Anna, how long have we had this thing? For a while now? Yeah, okay, yeah. And so we have special events, that this month is kind of like Mental Health Awareness Month. And I was going on our social media sites or Facebook, and we're having all kinds of things on it every single day, highlighting another aspect of mental wellness or mental health and parent support. And so if you haven't been to a Facebook site, go there, because a lot of the stuff that's in the link here is then displayed there. So we have certain events that have been happening to go, and you can kind of see that this is our staff engaging in the community with our partners to do certain things. So we have like supporting youth event on May 30th, and you can kind of read all about that. We have our Credible Mind that's on our website that anybody in the public can access, and it gives you a lot of self-help and very targeted to interventions in dealing with mental health systems or challenges. And if you haven't been to Credible Mind, go there. It's both credible and has a good mind, and there's a Q code you can do on there and go through that. You will see mental health facts of the month that are listed there. It lists our board schedule. It always has a section of recipient rights reminding everybody about the right system and to click and to read it. So I just wanted to orient the board to the Lakeshore Link, and I'll highlight it to you. I'll send you an email. You get enough from me already, I know. An email saying, hey, it's out. The link's out. It's on the website, whatever. But we do share this out in the community. And I'm thankful we do it. And I don't have any part in writing anything in this. It's the staff that do it. It's all of us getting together with resources. And I like that because it puts other people front and center of what we're educating. I will make sure I review this stuff to say like, well, don't put that because that's not right, but that's never happened. So just wanted to educate you to the Lakeshore Link. Any questions on that? Okay.
Michael, in the future, will we post the committee meetings as well?
Yes. Yep. We're gonna have so many posting, people are gonna be like, I'll just show up every day. Okay, the next thing I want to do is to go through the 2024 annual report. I was part of our program for the last quarter of the year last year. And so next year's annual report will look a lot different in terms of what we put in it, the structure in which we do it, and how we disseminate it. It's my hope that moving forward, the annual report will review materials that the public and you are up to date on every quarter anyway. So the time we get to the end of the year, we're not waiting, it's May and we're talking about last year for an annual report. It's a requirement that we give an annual report to you, but also an annual needs assessment. And in the future, I'm going to start blending those together. So this report was put together and it's online and people can do it. And there are sections where there's actually videos that you can click on and watch the stories that are highlighted there, including me talking about strategic direction and a couple of the programs we have. So what I'd like to do is highlight a couple of sections on this and then ask you to review it. And then next time we meet, if you have specific questions related to it, you can give them to me because you didn't have enough time to go through it to evaluate a question list. So we'll make sure in the future that these are out sooner. You can look at it, formulate questions. And this, is something that we have to improve on. It's a timing issue. We don't even close our books. We're still not closed for 2024 on the financials. It's May, okay? But one of the things I wanted to highlight, if you could go 2 slides over. Thank you. 2024 was definitely a year of transition for our organization. And we had Lynn Doyle, our executive director, retire after serving over 20 years in Ottawa County. So I think one of the things that I'd like to do publicly and through this report is to thank her for her service. And just so you know, Lynn's kind of back in a way. She's taken a job with the Lakeshore Regional Entity, looking at some quality issues with our number of audits, how we do audits, and I'm hopeful that she'll reduce the number of audits since she's been in this chair and understands that there is a real huge administrative burden on us. But I just want to say that a lot of the foundation that I'm building for is a result of her work and some of the challenges that she had to face, I now have to face, but in a different way. Because some issues have changed since I've been on board with this. But I thought it would be appropriate in our director's letter in our 2024 to acknowledge her service, since she was the executive director for almost the entire fiscal year. So Lynn, if you're watching, Thank you for your service. One of the things, I'm still trying to figure out, do I read that or read this? Look down, look up, so sorry. One of the things that I think in 2024 is our commitment to try to figure out how to keep community and community mental health, and then how to actually develop into a center of excellence. You can go to the next slide. You can see our mission is still the same. We read it earlier today, and our vision is still the same. But in our mission and vision statement, there's two or three essential pieces that pull out that serve as the foundation for the rest of the report, and then soon our strategic plan. One is keeping community and community mental health, which is going beyond Medicaid services. We are more than a Medicaid health plan. The second is continually to develop as a center of excellence. For whatever we do, we're going to use best practices. We're going to have community involvement and good stewardship. And those are reflected in several slides in here. But the vision is something that for this year we were looking for, last year we were looking for, but this year we're going to have to even more look at. Does what we do actually improve the quality of life for those we serve and their loved ones around them? Because it doesn't matter how excellent your service is or how much of an array you reach out beyond Medicaid. If it doesn't change people's lives for the better, does it matter? And so for 2025 on, we're going to be trying to answer that question from a variety of perspectives. How is your life or your loved one's life or the community's health in terms of mental wellness improved? And so that's in line with our mission and vision. High quality, addressing quality of life. Next slide, please. When you get into the values, I won't go
Michael,
through.
could I
Yes,
interject?
please do.
Thank you for making that a priority. 15 years ago, we had discussions about the inadequacy of metrics and determining how well we were doing. We never asked the question, is your life better?
Right.
And I think that's an important focus to keep.
Yeah, is your life better? Are your natural supports life better? Is the community health better? However we measure those. We have the unique responsibility of being the tradition of care that impacts not just who we serve, but our community and their support system. And that's going to be a focus that we're going to be we have been, but we're going to be more articulate and more intentional about it. So when you look at the value section for 2024, I'm not going to go through, I mean, who shouldn't have a value of ethics, right? Right? Or service or staff. But you can look into that. And if you have questions about how we measure our progress on that, I'll be able to say, is this part of the 2025 strategic plan, which it will be? And then how are we ensuring these things? And I think the board will be very much a part of that. So I didn't intend to read all of those boxes today. Again, I'm going to ask you to read this and formulate any questions, send them to me, and then we can review them again in public at another date. Next slide. So how are we working on being a center of excellence, keeping the community mental health, evidence-based practice, and stewardship? And so you can go to the next slide because it goes into that. This isn't, when you look at 2024, we were in a transition of, okay, being part of a CCBHC demonstration project, which has certain requirements that we have to follow and practices we have to think, and expanding our network out to, say, moderate mental health kind of issues. And we had a lot of community programs that we've been able to utilize with our millage and with, excuse me, some of the general funds that we have or CCBH funding. So keeping the community mental health, I will tell you, has been primarily in 2024 trying to understand how are we spending millage, what types of programs do we have, how are we going beyond Medicaid? And we're just beginning that journey. We did in 2024, started that, and you'll see some of the programs that we highlight. But we need to continue to make the link between millage, programs that Medicaid doesn't cover, general fund, and CCBH funding sources. So you'll see keeping the community and community mental health increasing in its importance. If we don't do that, we'll be nothing more than a Medicaid program and not community mental health at all. We might as well be called Priority Health, Ottawa, Behavioral, whatever. So that whole thing there is looking beyond Medicaid services as a foundation of why CMHs should exist, besides just the delivery of Medicaid services. So you'll see more and more of that coming up. Evidence-based practices, we use several evidence-based practices. We'll highlight one in here. Both required by contract and by self-selection. So at the PQI committee and in future board meetings, you'll see a list of the evidence-based practices. Who are they targeted to treat? What are the promises of those evidence-based practices? Meaning if you do it a certain way, you should have certain outcomes. And is that true? Because there's really no value in using evidence-based practices, which are a manualized approach based on research for its effectiveness, if they actually are not effective. And if the state requires us to use certain evidence-based practices and they're not effective, we need to challenge that. Because believe it or not, it's more costly to use an evidence-based practice than to not. Hence why private practices are not mandated to do so. They use them, but they're not mandated to. We are. But I like that. We have to be like the Mayo Clinic of behavioral health for the people we serve. And so evidence-based practices is one of the ways we do that. And then stewardship supersedes all of it. If we're not a good steward of our resources and the community's trust is part of that, then the first two don't matter. And so you'll start seeing us converge in those three themes this year and next year as part of strategic priorities that develop measures to see how we're doing in all of those. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's go to a couple slides over. That one. So I've been talking about that, keeping the community mental health. You can read that. Go to the next slide. So when you're in the report, just for the public and you, there's a link and there's a video that describes the program in depth here. And I thought we'd not watch the whole video. That's why we have it there. You can watch it there. But we're going to add multimedia to our annual reports that will have more consumer feedback to it, participant feedback into it, what the program meant to them, and then kind of staff as well. So one of our programs that go beyond Medicaid is our Pathways program. And that's really assisting people where Medicaid falls short. It's linking people to primary health care. It's doing getting people there. There's a lot of transportation in there. It's educating folks to physical health kind of needs that they have. And we do that pretty much through this program. Let's go to the next slide. So if you watch the video, you'll get a sense of the staff. In fact, I think the person on the cover is part of that program, right, of this report? This guy here, yeah. All right, so Pathways by the numbers. So you're going to say, how is this different than supports coordination or case management? This goes beyond that. It goes beyond the limitations of case management and supports coordinators' ability to do some things. And these are for our folks that we serve. So medical services referral to medical referrals to those folks. We refer people to those. We get people connected with food assistance, housing. So we work with our internal teams with this program and folks coming in. And sometimes our supports coordinators or case managers don't have the time to bring them there or actually sit down and make sure that they're linked to all of these things because they do some of this too. So this provides that. We've had kind of, when it says Pathways open, that's 579 kind of interventions. Total referrals since we started in 2018 is 681. That is unique. Of those, 413 were our consumers. Those weren't, but we still help them. And we have a breakdown in terms of that. So the program's designed to deal with some of what I would call the social determinants of care, which are transportation, housing, linking them to food assistance, and ensuring that they're actually getting to places where the system is falling down. Everybody debates, you ask any of the provider network, or Peggy, you would know this very well, Who's supposed to take people to medical appointments and who pays for it? Wow, there's, DHS is supposed to do it, but there's a huge criteria for that. This program, we say, for crying out loud, let's get people there. Okay, let's make sure that they're linked. Let's make sure that if they have a medical appointment, we can send somebody to say, get in the car, let's go, right? For the folks that maybe have poor compliance with that or need assistance navigating that. So it's pathways to better health that are consistent with mental health services, but links to people to other resources in a more direct way than, say, a support coordinator or case manager can do. Our case management caseloads get to the point where, it'd be very difficult for them to have this level of on-the-ground linking to other things. So this is a program that's focused on our particular consumers or folks that maybe some of those that were referred out to get linked into other services. And it's an additional service that we offer as a community-based service. So there's a pathway participant statement in the next page. And you go back one. It is about helping people with their journeys, walking alongside, right? So another way we do that is on the next program, our Community Navigator program. We're one of the only CMHs in the state that has this. So what is it? Navigators work in our access department to walk alongside people while we're determining eligibility. They provide, I like to call it this way, it's not talked about in here this way, but the way I've conceptualized it, it's support, educate and assess, then navigate. What are your needs when you first come to the system? If it's going to be a CMH route, we support them while they're getting evaluated. If not, we stay with that person until they're referred and connected somewhere else. And so we provide this service that goes beyond a traditional access to mental health system access department, where they may do a screening and evaluation, but they're not doing kind of like crisis stabilization. They're not saying, okay, what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we're going to walk alongside you till we figure it out. And you can keep coming back for us for support while those external stuff, if it's not internally, are taking place. So that's what the program's trying to do. And you can turn the slide there. There's a video and it kind of gives more of a description of that. We use an evidence-based practice in zero suicide. Zero suicide is an evidence-based practice that has the ideal of trying to prevent suicide, right? I will tell you that the name is hard for me, but the practice is good. As a surviving spouse of a suicide, zero suicide can feel, okay, like all suicides could be prevented. That's not the intent here. It's basically saying we're going to do everything we can to intervene as much as we can to stabilize someone so that there are more options for them. Who's against zero anything? Zero cancer, zero leukemia, zero this. But it is an evidence-based practice we use that really helps beef up our kind of crisis and suicide evaluation process. And our navigators are doing that in the front end. And there's a relationship between the navigators and our crisis services. There's a handoff that goes there. So the next slide kind of shows you some of the impact of that. So that big number, 1794, those are interventions. They're not unique people, they're interventions. We've had 1,700 methods of assisting people. Crisis follow-ups, 569. They help determine pre-screening, doing the pre-screens of over 893 people. They provided crisis stabilization services going beyond just one service, helping that while we're determining 56. We've helped with 32 people navigate the homeless services system. It's hard. There's not a lot of room there. And you kind of look at the numbers 579, then kind of the pie there. The idea here is there's a robust level of intervention that we're doing that other access departments are not doing throughout the state. It's unique to Ottawa County, the navigator program that we have. There may be other navigators in the state, but that's more like system navigators. They're not connected to access and crisis the way ours is. And so for next year, I want to know, did it matter? What happened to these people? They got into service and they didn't need to be in the hospital. Or they're doing well, or we lost touch with several folks. So the next step is navigation led to continuous follow-up. It'll take manpower, it will take a dedication, focus, but I want to be able to answer the question with our navigator program. If they navigated to us in our program, how's it going? And if it was somewhere else, are they still in care? And if they're not, what happened to them? And any of the people that went into our navigator system, say 6 months later or 3 months later, went into the crisis program, I want to know that. Like, oh, is that because it was a failure to connect them? But we bring this up as an annual report item because in 2024, just like in 2023, but we really are focusing on that. And now I'm going to turn it up a notch and say, what is the value of these programs, keeping community mental health, improving it? Does that make sense?
Michael,
Yep.
I feel like, Peggy, maybe we were on that millage review committee. You can
Mhm.
help us too. Wasn't the navigator something through the millage?
Yeah, it was partially paid through, some of it was.
Yeah, because that was the first time I heard about it in
Yeah.
our committee.
Mhm.
It's just an intriguing thing. I
Yeah,
want to be a navigator.
yeah.
when I
We'll sign you
retire
up.
someday.
Seriously,
I think it's-
you can start Monday.
No, I got a job, but.
We'll close this Monday, but, but
That was the first time I heard about it in our millage review committee last year or 2 years ago. And so it's just fascinating.
so any way, any funding source or any methodology that's going beyond the Medicaid services and their funding sources like millage or a grant or things like that, we'll do a better job showing you that and how they're all interrelated. Because we show you the funding sources stuff and you're like, well, which, does that pay for that navigator thing or does this pay for that thing? So we'll have a more robust way to see it. Millage in action, keeping community mental health in action. That's millage, grants, and general fund, basically. Medicaid, oh, it's a huge part of us. It's amazing what we do with Medicaid. But what makes us unique in keeping community mental health as a community-based system is millage, grants, some CCBHC, general fund. And knowing how that's addressing the non-Medicaid need and helping us support Medicaid is important. And even when I did those funding source reviews, it's still like, well, is that still connected to that thing? Which programs are connected to them? So you'll start seeing a linkage between that.
So could that be why we're about the only county that has the navigator?
Yeah,
Because millage-
for the grants we have too, and some CCBHC, but the grants, we went after a lot of grants. It's, they used to be Anna Benerick's sole job. Well, she did other things too. But the reality was to expand our grants because, and with our grants, it's like, listen, if the grant's no longer supported, you have tough decisions to make, right? But it allowed us to have systems of care, to have other grants that we have to wrap around the community because the system is too dependent on Medicaid.
Right.
And I love Medicaid. I love the services. I love the waivers. I love self-directed care. I love all of that. But if we're not careful, that's all you'll be in the state. So one of the other programs is the Clubhouse, if you could get to that. So keep going. We're talking about evidence-based, the Clubhouse, Cherry Street, it's across from BAM down in Lansing. Yeah.
Bowling alley.
Yeah. I used to have an office right across from the Clubhouse, private practice office, and I'd go over there all the time. Clubhouses are part of psychosocial rehabilitation, and a lot of people don't know it's a very distinct evidence-based practice that's been around since the early 80s. Fountain House was the first clubhouse in New York. The second clubhouse in America was in Lansing, Michigan, Charter House. Michigan has more clubhouses than any other state. Why a clubhouse? Clubhouse is not a drop-in. Clubhouse is not a social rec program. Clubhouse is a distinct model of psychosocial rehabilitation that allows folks to kind of manage their own kind of club, navigate that, learn skills, and have something called the work order day. Staff are part of that. But people don't realize that Clubhouse, which primarily serves people with severe mental illness, you don't have to, but it primarily serves that, has been found just as efficacious as therapy and psychiatry has in stabilizing symptomology of those with severe mental illness. It's about relationship. So you've heard Barb from the Memento Center get up a lot. It's about relationship. She's not wrong. Clubhouse is a psychosocial rehabilitation model that's well established in the literature as a distinct evidence-based practice, and only the public mental health system does it. Why doesn't the private side do it? Because it's not psychiatry and therapy. It's not the medical model. But I want to educate the board and the community that Clubhouse is more than just hanging out.
They have a couple of places I've been there. I looked. They have it where some of the Clubhouse people help do certain sections to help promote it as well. They also have people that come from buses, far places just to get there. They have a place where they can make food. They can also have a place where they do videos and
That's right.
showing what they do.
And it's job skill development. It isn't just we're cooking just to cook.
Yes, they also help find you the right job.
That's right. Clubhouses used to be premier. People don't talk about them much. Paul Duff and I remember the days that these were the prominent thing when we worked together in Lansing. But I'd like to show the stats for this program for last year. Next slide, please. She has to type what I'm saying and do the slide stuff. Whatever we're paying her, we have to double. Okay. And she has to figure out where I'm going, which no one can figure out. 49 members supported. Hours of skill building through collaborative work, 17,000 hours. It's probably like 17,001 or 16,098. Anytime you see an even number, it means we round it up or round it down, because you can't have 17,000 on the button, right? Okay, so hours of social activities in the community that's organized, 1,800. Clubhouse members outreach to support connections to decrease isolation, 400. Lakeshore Clubhouse members with employment assisted, 12% higher employment rate than the national average, getting into work. This is a model that says, come together, find a purpose, learn a skill outside of the traditional medical model. And it's one of the most efficacious things that keep people out of crisis. So what we need to add to this is Clubhouse members that had a crisis contact within the year. And I bet you they're going to be lower, statistically significantly lower, I'm betting, I'll have to prove it, than those that are not in Clubhouse with similar like conditions. So I let the board and the community know in 2024, keeping the community and community mental health is Clubhouse is one of these things that we do. And it's an evidence-based practice. It's also in the Medicaid provider manual, if you like to read that stuff. And it's vital. It's not social rec. It's not drop-in. It's part of a continuum of relationship building that has similar elements to drop-in, social rec. But this is a distinct, manualized, research-based, and proven to meet the standard of an evidence-based practice, which means you have to have at least 2 controlled studies with 2 independent research studies verifying the same results. It's very effective and not talked about much. That's going to change.
So can someone just walk in, or they need to get referred?
Well, they can get referred, they can walk in, and there's a process to be enrolled. It's for our consumers. We do allow other folks to come, but we want to keep it as within the parameters of what's called the fidelity of the evidence-based practice. Because if it turns too much into a drop-in for a full range of stuff, then you lose the power. That's why we need those other elements in the community, social rec and drop-in. They're doing similar things in a specifically different way in terms of Clubhouse. And if you haven't been there, I'll take you there. We'll do a tour. We'll go over there. And it looks like we have to check out the new site in Holland too for the Momentum Center. So you can see the whole continuum of this stuff. And I'd love to take you on a field trip over there because, you know, it's a very effective program. Did you even know we had it? Good. I had to remind myself. Yeah. Good. The last one I want to talk about is ACT. Yes, go ahead.
Michael, is peer-to-peer support included as one of the mechanisms that Clubhouse uses?
Yeah, it's required, but there's staff assistance too. That's what makes a little difference. Not all consumer run like a drop-in is. It's a combination of peers taking leadership roles within the clubhouse, they even have like an hierarchy in positions, and then staff supporting them in their roles. It's peer-to-peer with support. Okay, ACT, we talked a little bit about it. We drafted our ACT director to be the new director for the population. And I'll just go, I'll describe it, but I'll go right to the kind of stats on that. It's just as ACT data. Keep going right there. All right. So imagine a team. Keith, remind me, what's the amount of people that we can have on a team? I forget the limit. Like the 60? Yeah. So this evidence-based practice says you cannot have more than 60 people on the team. And it has specific requirements of how much staff you need on the team. It includes a doctor, a nurse, a social worker, and a case manager. And it's a team model that goes to where people are in the community with poor treatment compliance or severity of need. Sometimes they'll come into the James Street office, but most of the time we're launching out. So when you look at some of the stats here, you're going to go, you mean in 2024, only 10 people successfully met their treatment goals and were then transferred to a level of care? Usually it takes a long period of time to stabilize, understand the team, and be moved to the level of care. That's a lower level of care, less intensive, right? Not as many visits, not a whole team kind of approach to you. So when you look at 10, you can kind of go 10 out, well, that's out of 60 people. So that percentage is quite high when you look at it that. Next year, we'll put the percentage because it doesn't do you justice of what happened here. And then we have this one thing about housing. 2 people. Do you know how difficult it is to find housing for folks with severe mental illness with poor treatment compliance? 2 is good. We want 10. But the housing situation in our county, especially for our folks that we serve, is even more challenging than the general public, and it is very difficult for the general public. But this is a specific evidence-based practice that's been around now for about 25 years. Michigan has more ACT teams than any other state in the country. It's a requirement that every CMH have an ACT team unless you're so rural that you don't need it, and there's a lot of criteria for that. Because it's very labor intensive and it's an expensive team. And the goal is to keep people out of hospitalization or state hospitalization and try to keep them in our community and to eventually get them to a lower level of care like our teams or just therapy and psychiatry. This is the reason why people don't live in state hospitals. It's programs that we offer like ACT to provide community-based care that meets their needs for severe and persistent mental illness. And if we didn't have an ACT team, we'd have to open up state hospitals. And that's where people will go that have poor treatment compliance with medication or treatment, or it's not always treatment compliance, have a severity of illness that requires an intensive team-based model. Did I describe it okay? Yes, you did. Okay. If he said no, I'd say, well, then you get up here right now. But that's the CMH difference. The tradition of care within community mental health includes ACT. No other medical model or tradition of care in behavioral health requires this. You as a board have the honor of having this program that we have to manage. And I'm stressing it on purpose because later in my report, which I'm getting to quickly, it's going to talk about how the state's forgotten what community mental health really means and what we actually do. This is one of the distinctives. We should be proud of it. We need to highlight it. We'll get better data on its effectiveness. Distinct evidence-based practice. Any questions on that? Thank you. Stewardship. We're going to go 2 slides over. There you go. The financials we're going to talk about extensively for the rest of the board meeting. 2024's financials, we're still actually, believe it or not, closing the books. And there's some slides about how much money we sent where. But I actually want to wait to have that discussion in the finance committee and bring that section back because I'm not we're still figuring out where we landed in 2024. But what I do tell you is that we've served 4,500 folks, individuals, 1,800 with adults with mental illness. These are distinct, not just episodes. These are unique. Children with serious emotional disturbance, 917. This means in that division, they got at least one service, right? What we'll have to do for next year's report is have a breakdown of the service types and the percentage of people that are engaged in those. So you'll know, like, that's great, Mike. They had 1,800 people in adults. Were 1,100 of them one crisis contact? Like, what does it mean? But from a 30,000 feet, you can see the impact of 4,500 people. Okay, and this does not necessarily include all of the people that we serve in the millage programs. We're still looking at the connection of our numbers to that. And remember, we're switching to an EMR that's going to be able to do that starting in June, a lot easier for us. The one that we have now, it's been almost impossible. And Anna Benerick, our CEO, will tell you, I'm always saying, do we even know how many people we've served? And she's assured me and showed me many times that this number is accurate. Right. And when Beth was running the IDD division, I'd say the same thing. Does this look right to you? And she'd go, no, it doesn't look right to me. So we're getting better and better in understanding this. This is the best we have in terms of a snapshot for 2024. In 2025, it will be broken down by the number of people served and the type of services they received. So you can get a general sense of our footprint. And you look at adults with a substance use disorder. They may have a co-occurring disorder, so you need that separated out. How many folks only had a substance use disorder, right? So some of these numbers, you know, the 4501, I trust. Some of these others is some overlap. So you look at 10 for children with substance use disorders. There's got to be more than 10 kids with a drug issue, 18 and under, that we're serving somehow. So we're going to look at that as well. So when you look at that, you can write your notes like, is that low? I'm telling you, we're looking to verify these for next year.
Is co-occurring captured in the adults with mental illness?
Yeah, you know, so we used to at Ottawa County have a distinct team for co-occurring DD, adult DD, and mental illness. We don't have that team anymore. And we have to look at that. But with substance use in our ACT team, they're also considered an integrated dual diagnosis treatment team, which is a specific evidence-based practice of treating people with severe mental illness and substance use disorders. And there's a fidelity measure for that. So that ACT team has two evidence-based practices based into one. But our numbers are not necessarily at this point, well, I know they're not, reflecting the level of distinction that we need. It's still too general. It's like, yeah, great footprint, doing a lot. I want to get to, and how? Which we'll get there. And I'm telling you, this new EMR, it's either going to be the greatest thing ever, and I go, yay, or I'm going to be like, oh, no, right? But we really believe it's going to aggregate the data for us a lot better. The next slide is just to show you proportionally our contracted services, those that we don't directly operate with CMH staff. By far, residential services, licensed residential, close to $20 million in kind of like expenditures is the leader. Then you have autism, certain aspects of that, and then you have skill building programs and various CLS programs in the contract. Next year's data will have that broken down even more because within specialized residentials, there's 3 or 4 different types that you have to see the relationship to. So this was just to give you a visual in 2024, spike there and an autism, which were the primary drivers at our end of the year deficit that we didn't know about until November for last fiscal year. And so it just gives you a visual of the contracted footprint. And remember the report that we still have in finance, and Sylvia, you asked, like, what do these bars mean? Well, that shows you what part of that service is actually contracted and directly operated. And you'll be able to see that again this month and go, oh, I see now. The big yellow means a contract provider. Contract providers are part of CMH. They are CMH. They are part of our system. They're not separate. If the contract providers didn't do the service, we would have to do it. If Benjamin's Hope or Harbor House didn't exist, we would have to directly operate it somehow, which we used to do back in the day here and in Lansing. When I was at CMH in Lansing, we directly operated 85% of all of our residential programs. It shifted. But let's be clear, our residential provider network and all of our providers are us. And so that's why they're listed here. They're very important. They're part of the system. Okay. So then you have the next one, direct run services. You can kind of get a sense of what type of service we're directly running. General psych services, medication, therapy, case management, supports coordination. Why do we directly operate those? The closest to the person-centered plan a service is, the more we want to directly operate it. We use our contract providers and self-directed care and self-determination as a way to carry out the items on a person-centered plan. But it's my philosophy that supports coordination, case manager, clinical staff that have to work in a team model need to be very close to us in terms of who operates it. Helping to populate the person-centered plan and determining the needs and addressing some of them at various levels. So you go to Network 180, Kent County, this slide is like Access, a lot smaller. They contract out almost everything per their history. So we have a mix between directly operated services close to the person-centered plan, and on the mental health side, having control of the continuum of outpatient to intensive outpatient to ACT with our own staff to help navigate that, and then crisis services. On the DD side, we primarily directly operate supports coordination, right? And we're doing a lot on some of the clinical services we're doing directly. And then we're using our extension, which is our providers, to provide other services like CLS. We used to run it all when I was here last. We had every B building, people would go and drop off their loved ones every day. We had skill building and CLS. And there was a philosophical shift in the state on how those services are delivered. And it ended up us closing that and using our provider partners, which are us, to deliver that. But we're trying to keep directly operated services by CMH staff to have control of the person-centered plan and what goes in it and supporting it, and then using contract providers in a very distinct way for a very distinct service. One thing that's missing here is self-directed service. What percentage of folks are in self-determination, receiving self-directed care, and the budgets associated with that? What's our social self-determination footprint? We'll be adding that for 2025. And if you're in the audience, I know one person is that does self-directed care, people don't understand how much it costs and the impact. And so we have to do that. Go to the next one. This just shows you where we ended up. Like, and again, these are not completely done yet. This just shows you the size of the Medicaid budget, which, Paul, this does include CCBHC within this big, huge blob, because CCBHC is a form of Medicaid. It has certain requests, so we decided to put it this way. As Amy will tell you, we're still trying to figure out the footprint. Like, we're still figuring out where we're ending on that. So you get more on that later. And then you can see the expenditures. The most costly thing we do is services for folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. That doesn't mean that that is a problem. It doesn't mean that line should be less. The state needs to understand that all services have to be funded to meet their need. The state is failing in their obligation to fund adequately the entire system, especially in that division. They've always been the largest expenditure division, our CMH. Supports for IDD has always been 60% or more, 50 to 60% or more of our total expenditures, ever since we opened. The other programs need more money They need more money. But this just gives you a breakdown of how we're spending our money. Next year, you'll see it per service within there. You'll see a breakdown on that. So this just gives you a visual. Why are we talking about residential all the time? That's why. Right there. That make sense?
Michael,
Yes.
is there a state standard for identifying administrative expenses as a percentage of total revenue?
Yeah, we have to do we have to do a report every year that highlights our administrative cost. And our administrative cost is usually quite low as compared to other delivery systems in the state. Our administrative costs on average on CMH is 10% or lower. Sometimes it gets a little higher based on a certain division. Versus say the health plans where their administrative cost is 25%. Right. And so as a system, even though people say, oh my God, CMH is huge, we're actually extremely efficient in terms of administrative cost. It's the systems above us that take a slice to and a slice there, but we have to stay within certain parameters. And we have to report on our admin cost, and we'll provide a breakdown on that at an upcoming finance committee and then the board so you can see it. We're quite efficient, even though it seems like we're a huge bureaucracy. Did that answer your question, or did I kind of?
Yep.
All right. I tried to add the whole.
Hey, Michael,
Yeah.
how do you separate autism and intellectual and developmental disability?
Right now it's age. So it's just literally an age thing. So right now, like if you're over a certain age, you're in the big green bar. If you're under, you're in the autism bar. And there could be some overlap if you're between 18 and 26.
Okay,
Yeah. And so you see how we have to get more specific, like who and where.
yeah.
This says one story. But what does it really mean?
Yeah.
So in 2024, this is what I can show you. 2025, you'll see a far different way of looking at it.
All right.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, well, I was just wondering, because it seems like there could be overlap between the.
Yeah, there can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Believe me, ask fiscal services. There's overlap. Like, how do we separate them out? We have to do a standardized cost allocation report. It's almost impossible. It's a matrix of like a million variables and try to put them in distinct categories and calculate the rates and expenditures for each one. Our last EMR couldn't do it. Amy's and her staff been doing it by hand.
And doing a great job.
Yeah. Getting reports. Well, yeah, but it's hard to kind of know.
Yeah.
This new system we're going to, and some of it, not all, you press a button and it calculates, it tells you, and shows you why. We're hoping that's the case. If it doesn't, I'm going to be mad. So the rest is just kind of a breakdown in expenditures and revenue for 2024. I'm trying to focus on the year that I've been in charge. And 2024, we ended up with a deficit, right, that we weren't aware of until November. The fiscal year ended on 9/30. We're still working on that. I'm going to talk about that later in my report. Without any questions, I'd like to move on unless there's some more you'd like to talk about related to this. Okay. One of the things I'm going to do quarterly is develop what I'm calling the CMH Community and Services Impact Report. This report will highlight the number of services we have provided by the various divisions. I list them there: family services, adult, IDD, adult MI, substance use. We're kind of up a little bit. Yeah, right there. Okay. And the impact that staff and providers are having within the community. It's time we let the world know how essential our services are. I primarily do this in the PQI committee and then bring summaries of these types of reports to the full board quarterly. We have so much wonderful thing happening in the different programs that we have. And all I do is talk about certain things that are budgetary issues when I come here. So I literally have staff watching the board meeting saying, doesn't he even know that family services exists? We got to change that. And so part of our committee structure in here is that we're going to get very detailed with standardized ways of reporting on each population group we're serving so the community can see, and more importantly, our staff can see and you can see what we're doing, how we're having an impact with outcome data attached to it. And that's going to be a quarterly report that's done at PQI for each division. that we then brought to the full board after an extensive conversation with that committee. We have to start highlighting the true impact and be transparent of what we're doing all over CMH. And so for the folks that on my staff that are listening, that you have felt like I have not been able to talk about your division, you are valuable. We're going to highlight this. The community needs to know what you're doing. We need this for self-directed care too. I have no idea the true struggles of our families doing self-determination. I've heard it, but what does it really mean? What are they doing every day? So I'm going to be turning it up quite a notch and start having us have the directors and myself develop these quarterly reports. They'll be standard, so they look the same for each division, same information. So you understand the impact of that. Because if not, you only know what you know. If you're a family member of somebody with a developmental disability, you're going to naturally like, well, how's that go? If you're somebody that's on our board and you have a mental health condition, you go, well, what's really going on there? We're going to highlight our footprint on every division we do, even our community-based programs that are millage-based, every quarter. Sound okay? Okay, because if you're like, don't do that, I won't. It's a lot of work, but I'm thinking we should do it.
Do it.
Okay. Okay. One of the things I forgot to attach, unless you did it and I didn't remind you to do it, is the Ottawa County Commissioners are set to vote on a resolution to instruct the state of Michigan to release the state Medicaid funding. Right? Remember I told you I got your permission to ask them. Well, we had one county commission meeting, and besides one no vote, not for the reason that they didn't believe, they wanted it more like a federal discussion on Medicaid. It was overwhelmingly approved to bring to the full county commissioners for their approval. I will make sure that resolution is sent to you because it got revised as of yesterday, some of the language. But it basically says, whereas the state has all these obligations, it is resolved that they do what the legislators have already done, which is to push out the funding to the CMH system. And I talk about that a little bit more in my report, but I just want to let you know that that's happening on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday at the county commission meeting. And it's one aspect of a lot of work that has to do to stabilize the funding. But I was very touched of the level of support that the county commissioners had on let's get this right. Because it's a risk for any county to have a resolution whereasing anything, let it be resolved. It is a position statement. And our county is taking the position that the state needs to keep its promise. And we're not responsible as a county to make up for their promise. We're not supposed to use county general funds to make up shortfalls in Medicaid entitlements. So this resolution states that clearly. So it will be sent for you once it's approved by the county. I'll send it to you before then, like today. But we actually were revising it yesterday at like 5 o'clock, and I forgot to send it to you. But that's what that agenda item is. It's to tell the state to push out the money. I have more of an update on that in a moment. So about the funding and the Medicaid. So I want to skip to the next one. So we're launching a new EMR. It's Auto. We call it Auto. Right? Well, it's going to be called Bob, but we don't know what that means. And we've been doing, once I first arrived here, we determined that it'd be best for us to shift to a system that every other CMH, the PHP in the state system is using to process financial reports, clinical documentation, EMR stuff, develop service activity reports and the like. So we're about to launch it in June. We have a whole bunch of activities planned with the staff. They're undergoing training right now. I'll just give you a highlight. It's not going to be pretty. Any new system has its bugs. However, in one of the trainings, the staff literally started applauding. And they're going, look what this can do. This used to take me an hour. Watch this. Done. We're thinking that over time, this will save increased productivity, decrease duplication, and help with cost savings. And we're gonna have measures to prove it. Because that was one of the rationale of bringing here. The region uses the same system, it's called PCE. Every other CMH in our region does it. Every other CMH besides one in Lansing uses it. And we can finally start talking like a regular CMH to the system. We had a good run with Avatar. We had a good run with them, and that whole system we have there. But it outgrew the level of sophistication and integration we needed with the state. So I'm pleased to announce that we're moving to a new system in June. There'll be some bugs, but that was touching to hear. Staff literally got up and literally started clapping. I can't believe I'm seeing it can do this. And it does have, this is for Rosalie, a consumer portal. Know your audience, right? Okay, so that's just an announcement on that. We'll see how it does. Okay, a couple of statewide issues. I'm getting close, I promise. Ann and I, the CEO and I, attended the Directors Forum. This happens a couple of times a year where every CMH director is invited to come spend 2 days to discuss pressing issues, get education and comment to help us learn the system more and interact. Ann and I attended that Monday and Tuesday. And I would say that some of the highlights, we had a state Medicaid update, which is later in my report, but I'll bring it up now and whatever. As you know, we did an advocacy effort. We had a community meeting on instructing our community to let the legislators know of the issue of the withholding of the money and to help MDHHS push it out. Well, what we found out is that legislators did do that. They did contact that department and say, what gives? They received over 100 phone calls from Ottawa County folks, just so you know, saying, hey, can you help the department do this? The department sent out, told the system, well, we have the money, but we need the legislators to now let us release it, which is kind of true, but not really. So there's actually boilerplate language being, some legislators, and I'll get with Jordan to show the exact one that they want to do, to say to the department, you can release the money that we already appropriated. And so if that happens, we're a step closer to a rate adjustment on our rates to increase the Medicaid funding, not the CCBHC funding, the traditional Medicaid funding that we need to help deal with our pending issues of being underfunded. And to me, this is movement. It's not, we're not going to do it. Like, no, we're not going to do it. Now it's like, well, we're not exactly sure how to do it, even though they did it last year. So the update from the directors' forums, we saw that as a good thing, all the directors. And we thought it's what we're hearing from legislators when we interact with them is, makes sense to me. We don't know why it's not being appropriated, but are you sure you need it? Like, you know, because it's not like the state, I mean, the state has some fiscal issues that they're dealing with. But when I did my presentation, the reasons why the state was withholding, they didn't think we needed it. There is already a documented $100 million shortfall in the CMH system. 8 out of the 10 PHPs, we don't have Detroit Wayne's numbers. So only one of them are reporting either even or have some extra money in there. The rest of them are all in a deficit. So much so that some of the regions are already in the process of how do we close down? Because how do you manage something that has no money? So the need is there. The need has been sent to the state. Legislators have been very helpful in this regard. And I'm not talking about how the system is managed. I'm talking about the money that comes right in for services. That how the system is managed, is there going to be a change at that level? It's still to be determined. We're waiting to see what's going to happen. I'm talking about funding now for us. I'm worried about it, but that's not what I'm talking about. So there's some movement on how to release the money. And I'll keep you updated. And I'm going to ask Jordan, I'm going to meet with him and say, all right, here's what I'm told. You tell me if this is actually how it works in the legislature. Because we're hearing a lot of things that, well, if that's the case, how did they release money at the end of the year, the department last year? when this happened. They released 40 out of $90 million they were withholding. They didn't have to go back to the legislature, they just did it. So I'm interested to get your viewpoint on what the reality is of that. Van Workum and other legislators have been nothing but supportive, saying, hey, we'll inquire. If you need it, we'll see what we can do, but it's a departmental issue that we got to kind of resolve with the state. But I got to hand it to the legislators. They have understood the issue and said, all right, let's look at this. And I haven't met with one of them that has said, you don't need that money. Now, how the system's structured, people disagree on. Should there be one PHP, none, 3? I'll get to that when we have to get to that. My job is to ensure that we have the Medicaid resources to do what we're supposed to do. So that's kind of what we talked about the form. We also looked at potential federal Medicaid cuts, which I talk about later, but I'll just say now. Make no mistake about it. If there's a change in eligibility, if there's a change at the federal level, then to the state of who's on Medicaid, and it restricts the number or constricts the number down, we will lose funding. So on that, in a general sense, it's not which program is cut. That's another discussion. Any reduction of who is covered by Medicaid in the state of Michigan is a one-to-one corresponding cut to us, because we are primarily funded by the amount of Medicaid lives that are in or enrollees in our county. So yeah, they may not cut a waiver program because it's hard to do, or get rid of CCBHC, which is difficult to do, or, say we're gonna like change the FMAP, the amount of money the state pays for a certain amount of Medicaid drawdown. But any change in enrollment will impact us. So I've read the whole House bill, and I will tell you, if that gets passed by the Senate the same way and passed to the state to implement, it will restrict the amount of people, especially on Healthy Michigan and TANF. Healthy Michigan is a health plan kind of version of Medicaid that has a mental health benefit to it. It's less severe than folks that are disabled, aged, or blind. And TANF are usually folks that are meeting the income level needs only. If they change those, our buckets get smaller and we get less money. So I am watching this intensely, and will hold community meetings when I have information for specific advocacy. Right now, the advocacy is no Medicaid cuts. Well, okay, we don't know the specifics yet. We know what's in the House bill. We don't know what the Senate's going to do with it. I'm focused primarily on the state of Michigan's Medicaid crisis, give us what you have already promised, and keeping an eye on the federal stuff. But I know the public's concern that when we had a resolution at the county level, and Jordan, Sylvia, and if Kendra was here, she would remember, one of the members of the county commission, Commissioner Zolster, was like, it's not broad enough. We need to be a resolution towards the federal government too. And what I recommended is do it in phases. Let's know what the thing is before we do that. And the expression I gave was, before we take the speck out of the federal government's eye, let's take the plank out of the stake's eye first. That makes sense. We got to solve here to understand that, and vice versa, but they're both related. So any change in Medicaid eligibility, decreasing the number, will hit us significantly. Any change to like how a waiver is done is more specific, and we'd be able to look at the impact of that, but we're not there yet. There's nothing in the House bill that does anything to us besides reduce who's eligible. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Question, Michael. When we did Medicaid expansion a number of years ago, I think there was about a 10% increase of the number of people enrolled in Medicaid in the state. If we lose 10% of enrollees in Medicaid through whatever happens, assuming it happens uniformly across the state, county by county, do we still get the same percentage of total Medicaid dollars allocated to us? Or does that total amount of Medicaid funding to the state decrease?
Both. Well, not the first one. Second one's true. Remember, our Medicaid funding, I showed this infographic before, has so many different buckets in it too. It's how they change the eligibility requirements for Medicaid and which part of Medicaid that will hit, Healthy Michigan or TANF. So in Ottawa, we have more folks on TANF and Healthy Michigan than on DAB. So our DAB funding would stay the same, that part of Medicaid, but the other ones would go down, right? So it's premature to answer you specifically, but I can tell you generally, there isn't uniformity now within the state of Michigan of how much Medicaid we get, each CMH, because those buckets vary so differently, right? And so it's hard to, uniformity is a theoretical concept that I haven't seen in my lifetime. If you remember, funding equity now, same general fund thing we did in 2008, we have to do the same thing in Medicaid. This county is not funded the same way in terms of the different buckets than other CMHs in the state. They have more DABs, like Muskegon, so they get more Medicaid per person. By the way, folks that show up are Medicaid funding source blind. They have the same conditions, the same eligibility. So I can't go to somebody that's a TANF, poor person on Medicaid, and say, sorry, you don't get the same level of Medicaid, so it's the exact same benefit. It's the exact same service requirements. CMH is serving the portion of the Medicaid population that consistently comes for care. So to have us funded by the number of enrollees is ridiculous because our state assumes that only 6% of the Medicaid population is going to show up. They don't even give us funding for more than 6% of those folks. So 94% of the folks don't need us? So the answer to your question is no uniformity, too early to tell, and we won't know the general impact until we know the type of Medicaid that the eligibility changes for. Hopefully that made sense. I confused myself by the end, so I had to do a recap.
And in an area like Detroit Wayne, which may have 50% of the population on TANF, could suffer a greater.
Huge. What we found is that most CMHs are in a deficit. There's 46 of us. The majority of the CMHs were reporting deficits. 8 of the 10 PHPs. Ottawa County's last year deficit and this year deficit that we're trying to resolve is a problem everywhere. It's not a problem just in Ottawa. Okay? And so when you have a systemic funding process where 90% of the CMHs are reporting deficits and the regions don't have any reserves to fund the deficits, it shows a systematic failure throughout the state in determining how much money is needed, because it can't be mismanagement by all 46 CMHs and 10 PHPs simultaneously at the same time.
So then how does the state think we don't need the money?
Because they did it.
We're all in the same boat. So it's
Because the way they set the rates for us are 2 years behind the times. They used data from 2 years ago with a group called Milliman to do a process called actuarial soundness to see how actuarially sound what we get are, and it's always behind. Always.
How come they don't put more data in getting new data?
That is a $6 million question.
because like you just said, all 46 or we all can't be doing it wrong. Oh, this just makes me crazy.
Do they all have the deficit because of the withholding? Is that what the majority of their
If
deficit?
you don't have enough money, yeah. Right now, the amount of revenue we get doesn't really include growth.
Right,
It
but
doesn't
they're
assume like next
withholding-
year, we're gonna have more residential placements or more people coming in. They give you like a small percentage.
But if they approve so much for, and who is it that says, no, you don't need it once it's approved?
MDHHS, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Elizabeth Hortel, Director.
So
That's
they're
who.
doing that to every CMH, that's for the
single-
deficit.
Every single one.
So why does she, that's my point, like, why is she saying that? Like,
She doesn't
what's the
think
big
we
deal?
need it.
How do we let her know?
I can't give you, well, believe me, that's the full-time job I've been doing. I can't give you logic,
I
Don.
know, it makes my head spin.
You need $8, you're getting 6. We keep telling we need 8. Everybody needs 8, you
Yeah.
get 6. Well, you guys are doing it wrong. Everybody?
That's my point.
The entire system? By the way, the health plans are in the same boat. They're $200 million short. So something is structurally wrong at the department. And we're letting the world know. Believe me, I'm not making any friends doing this in public that's televised, but this is what we have to do. So that frames a lot of stuff. So I want to talk about a couple of things in a global sense, and then I'll yield my report and we'll get to the rest of the agenda. I put in my report that I think any change in eligibility will have an impact on us. So if you remember last board meeting, and I sent an email about this, we sent a budget adjustment to you. Say, hey, listen, we think there's a way for us to increase the revenue significantly. It will not only, and reallocate some of our cost. It will not only take care of any projected deficit this year, but help us with increasing a lot of stuff we do for next year. That plan primarily rested on the foundation of CCBHC funding. CCBHC funding allows you to allocate certain Medicaid expenditures and then get an extra, what's called a PPS1 payment on top of that, almost like an added payment to help provide and expand your services out to moderate population or help to deal with the cost here. So we developed a strategy to say, are we maximizing that funding source correctly? And so we put together a plan that we would have been able to move some of our CMH expenditures to the CCBHC side. I know we're in the weeds, and the Finance Committee is going to get all of this coming up, okay? And that increased our potential revenues. Well, here's what we found out. One, we would have the highest reimbursement rate in the state. So the state went, wait a minute, if we allow Ottawa County to do this plan, the state being MDHHS that's doing the CCBHC, then others might be able to do that, okay? And what you're saying is that your cost to deliver, quote, the services is much higher than everybody else's. So we've been in review with them. Amy's been working hard, we've been working hard to actually meet with the state, meet with the region, meet internally. Are our assumptions and our budget adjustment sound? What you'll see in your packet today for approval, the only contract for approval, is to bring in the Raymond Group. Already brought them in, had to bring them in this week, to help us determine with the state and the region, is our thinking correct by a third party that does this for multiple CMHs in the state. The Raymond Group specifically does CCBHC funding analysis, reporting for over half the CCBHCs in the state, and they provide fiscal oversight for fiscal services departments throughout CMHs, including county-run departments like Muskegon and Macomb. So the Raymond Group has come in to help educate us, Amy, fiscal services, on are we getting this funding stream and other ones correct? And I'm bringing them in because they know all of the connections of our finance stuff to our new EMR system. They know exactly how to educate us to the kind of fiscal services suite of how our reporting within PCE. And it's not like Amy can just take a class through PCE and learn it. We need people that are doing that CFO work to sit with Amy and others and say, here's how the financials are all integrated in this new system. Here's how you report it to the state. I'm going to be very clear. Our fiscal manager, Amy, is probably one of the smartest people I know. You can't do this without consultation and continuous contact with other folks that are doing it in the field. You can't just be internally. And it's important for us to get this right, or the whole strategy that we were going to have to help decrease our deficit and increase revenue falls apart. We may have to revise that strategy. And that's why when you look at the fiscal report for this month, we're still showing that 2.5 Medicaid deficit. Because we didn't want to apply the assumptions that we had you look at last month until we absolutely have them vetted by the state, by the region, by Raymond, and by us. And so that's why there's a change. I sent an email out, but I put it in a paragraph. I thought I'd explain it. So the only contract you have before you is to approve this group to come in and do that. Fiscal Services is in full support of this. Karen is in full support of this. We actually have already had one meeting. It's one of those emergency things, like it was under $50,000. I'm like, we got to start. and then kind of deal with this. But they just started this week to start looking at that type of stuff. But that's why that contract's there. I need to ensure as the CEO that we truly understand all of the fiscal implications of all of the funding sources we have and how they're reported in a system that keeps changing dramatically. And I can't expect Amy, even though she's wicked smart and could probably do it, to do it alone without support. Literally, we're double entering, and our regional partners can give you support, but they're busy too. So that's why that contract's there. It's under stewardship. It's my job to ensure, because regardless of what people say, it's my responsibility. I have to ensure, if the county has a different opinion, it doesn't matter, buck stops here. I need this group to come in and support us, to validate. Because the county commissioners have to deal with the budget adjustment at their level. And so you'll see how we're going to deal with that coming up. So that's why there was a change. There's still avenues to resolve our deficit. There's still ways that we can do this. We just have to make sure that CCBHC, our assumptions, are correct. The other major part of this, which I'll bring to your attention, is the CCBHC funding source, if a CMH uses it, according to the state, according to the region, and other CCBHCs, we are fully at risk for any over expenditures. So if I predict a revenue increase in that fund source and we fall short, there's no relief from the LREs, ISF, our risk corridor, their Medicaid for that. And I have to work with the county and us and decide, are we willing to take the financial risk for CCBHC? And do I have a right as an CEO to obligate the county for any type of general fund utilization if we miss the mark? I'll tell you, the county position so far is no, you may not. And so I'll be meeting with the county, Administrator Karen and others, legal counsel, to help determine what our risk exposure is for CCBHC. This means if we say we're going to generate 8 million in revenue, extra revenue, and we only generate 6, and we have a deficit of $2 million, that's local dollars. We'd have to use millage, state general fund, or county general fund to meet that deficit. We would have no relief from the region. So this is why there's a pause and a focused examination of our strategy. And it's going to lead to this question: does it make sense for Ottawa County CMH as a county department to be part of the CCBHC demonstration project? I can tell you 10 reasons why it does make sense, but I don't think it's my role to obligate this county to risk without people's eyes wide open to it. This is different than the residential services risk. That's on the other side where the region and the state shares that risk with us. So the next 15 to 30 days is all about me examining that in multiple levels, state, regional, county, to then bring by the first finance committee an analysis on our exposure of risk for the CCBHC program. Now, did any of that make sense? Because it makes sense to me, but I'm talking like my language. So that's why the financials don't look different this month. Time out, re-examine, bring in a third party that does this throughout the state, make sure we're doing it right, integrate it within our system, and get the county online with us on what our risk exposure is. Because a lot of that plan was increasing revenue in CCBHC. And if we have to make sure we're able to do it. Now, I'm also fighting for more traditional Medicaid, and I'm on my way. I was telling a member of our provider group yesterday, we were texting back and forth. Remember, providers are us. And I was saying, gee, my whole financial strategy is shifted. And she posted, wow, that could be bad news for all of us. And I said, absolutely not. It just makes me more determined. We will figure this out. We will get this done. We cannot let us to have huge deficits without a path forward. So when we have changes like this, I don't go, oh crap. I go, now I know what I have to deal with. It gives me information to deal with. And I'm going to provide that information to this board because it'd be irresponsible for me to show you a proposal that increases our risk by $8 million, our revenue by $8 million if it exposes us to an unrealistic amount of risk. And so I have to balance that, and you will get that answer. So that's kind of an explanation of like the budget stuff and why that contract is there. Is it good news, bad news? It's information. And it's my job to solve it with the information we have, and we will do it with the team we have and the region and the state. All of them are involved. I haven't waited. I'm already talking to the state. We already brought them in. Already talking to the region about our plan. I already brought them in. Now I have to broaden it with the county to understand that funding source, and do they want us to take the risk? Can we use millage to fund the shortfall if we had one? How is that done? And so what you might see is a call for a joint work session with this board and the county commissioners, all of them, to determine this. I'm going to meet with the county administrator last week to see if he concurs with that. I'll ask the county commission chair, but I think we should have a joint work session in understanding this so that both bodies understand what this actually means and helps makes a decision or give me input of how to move forward. I'll try not to do it in a holiday weekend.
So do you think that the CCBHC has been any part of our budget struggles in the past?
In a way, but not in a substantial way.
Okay.
One of the ways we determine additional CCBHC revenue is how many encounters so if we're below the amount of encounters we anticipated, there's a shortfall in revenue. But the biggest drivers are on the traditional Medicaid side, what we're actually the core of what we do. CLS, autism services, specialized residential lead the way in our over expenditures for unanticipated increases in utilization. And that's common throughout the state, which is good news because I can deal with it in a very specific way at the state level, the regional level, and here. So no, the current CCBHC system has not led to the majority of our financial woes. However, it was sought after by us as a possible solution. But then once I understood the implications of that solution, time out, re-examine, pull in experts, let's not do something foolish. As the last board member, board director George was giving me like, hey, brother, I know you're dealing with this, but don't increase the deficit unless it's absolutely vital, like health and safety reasons. That's the message I took across from that, by the way, is be careful. Don't create a deficit if you already have one more. And I'm going to talk about in a second, well, in some ways we have no choice if it's health and safety. Right. And that's when our regional and state partners help us with the funding for that.
How many different county or, CMH type orgs are part of CCBHC? 39.
Out of 46.
Okay.
And if that number is wrong, I'll get back to you, but that's what I remember.
Okay.
The whole northern half of the state, except for Traverse City, they remind me they're still part of it and up or not part of it. So it's pretty much down the west side, the middle and the east side, but pockets up near the thumb and up, they're all like, no. And there are pros and cons, and we'll go through why that is.
Right.
We're already in the demonstration. The boat left the dock a year and a half ago. So now I'm like, okay. We will have a solution for any Medicaid deficit that we have. We will have one. I just have to change, based on new knowledge, the methodology in solving it. It's going to either be through the LRE in the state and increasing Medicaid on one side, which we're actively pursuing, or maximizing CCBHC funding, knowing the risk. Okay. One of the two. But if you're listening or watching and you're a staff, we have plans. We have different kind of scenarios that we're working through. In fact, at the Directors Forum, we actually learned how to do scenario planning. And we're like, can we use the scenarios we're in, not like make pretend ones? And that was very helpful. Like, what if there's no this, or what if there's a major cut? We were looking at that.
Michael, there was a memo that came out from the state yesterday that the PHPs will no longer be involved in the CCBHC.
Yeah.
But the funding will go directly to the CCBHC providers. So the LRE would be out of the role of anything to do with the CCBHC.
Correct. Which creates a variable.
Yeah.
of risk. That means it's a sole contract between us and the state, like our general fund contract is, versus the PHP having a role of monitoring this and getting the money and managing it. There are huge implications to that the state has not thought through. And so we're helping them think that through. I'm part of a group that has to help them think that through. But the reality of the situation is that is a fundamental shift. And in my belief, it's a way to say we can reduce the number of PHPs down to 0 or 1 and disconnect CCBHC funding from them. So if I was going to contract out the system or reduce the number of those regions, I would have to disconnect CCBHC from them. So it's kind of like a step by step. But there are scenarios, as far as I'm concerned, we have to keep our eye on the ball here, but I'm also very involved at the state level at all of these things, which I don't get a lot of sleep, but they're vital that we stay on top of, for sure.
Yeah, and part of the reason why I bring that up is that if you're talking about protections from the PHP with the CCBHC, they will no longer be involved in that process, so.
I'm curious too, how many consumers do you think we're serving right now? Like how many people would it affect if we changed that?
It would have an impact at a large number. The direct number is hard to tell. We'll get the information because if a client uses even one CCBHC code with the modifier on it, but they may be getting tons of other services that are not covered by that.
Okay.
It's hard to split them out until PCE goes live and we press a certain button to say, here are the unique folks. Right now, most of our folks that are receiving that funder are blended. They're receiving both traditional Medicaid and CCBHC Medicaid. It's only folks that you extend out to that are not eligible for CMH traditional services, like moderate mental illness, that we can pull out and say definitely. So that's part of the analysis we have to do. But I will tell you, the footprint within CCBHC, within our own organization, is quite large.
Mm-hmm.
We're using that funding source in a lot of ways, especially in the mental ill adult populations, to cost things and get an extra payment.
And so I would be especially interested in how many, will lose any help that they get right now. So who are not blended in those other services.
Yes. And CMH Board Director Paul Duff sent that to me in writing too. Like, what's the impact of, if this goes away, a huge impact, but it's about $8 million of revenue we'd have to deal with, all kinds of stuff. But what is the impact to the person served? Luckily in Ottawa County, we have the millage that can help fill the gap. Without the millage, there is no community mental health, and we would be looking to fold those individuals into those programs.
Okay.
But that's why we need it.
All right.
So the last thing to bring to your attention is that the region has actually engaged in a specialized residential level of care and rate determination initiative like ours. I've met with them, and their goal is to help develop a regional rate system for residential providers and how we determine the level of care. I've met with them once. I have another meeting with them next week. They are aware that we have a new rate calculation system, a new model that we're developing. I'm going to ensure that our model is aligned with theirs, like we influence them. They've asked us to do that. They're looking at all of the residential rates and determination methods throughout the county, including Network 180, Muskegon, Allegan, and the West Michigan counties as well. The goal is to have uniformity in the parameters of how much services should cost, allowing for individual differences within the various counties based on individual needs or the types of services provided. So I'm letting you know that the rate initiative that we started has caught on region-wide. And the timing couldn't be worse because the reality is we don't have time for them to take months to figure this out. Why does Dr. Bashir say that? 3 quarters ago, and forget, I've only been here for 3 quarters. 3 quarters ago, I declared a residential emergency. Over the last 3 weeks, I've received 4 formal correspondences by 4 of our major providers, which I'm not going to announce by name here, but we'll send to the board to understand with the full report, that unless there's a rate increase immediately for 2 of them, they will run out of reserves in their organizations and will have to consider putting in 30-day notices for partial or all of their operations. This has the impact of over 70 consumers in our system. I'm actively meeting with these folks, seeing what can be done at the moment to prevent this. I've been having active dialogues with providers since day one. Why? Because they are us, not some separate agency trying to milk the system. We're darn lucky we have all of our providers, right? And we will come up with an action plan to have an immediate stabilization plan to prevent the potential. One organization is literally going to run out of their reserve by the end of July. And I told them not to publicly come out and say that yet, because I don't want to scare the bejesus out of the staff, the consumers, and families if we can fix this now. It's my job to ensure that health and safety is maintained through the region. I intend to do that. I'm in active dialogue with Mary, the CEO of the LRE, of this issue, the potential revenue that might cause or deficit it may cause to help fix it, to get their authorization and oversight, and to point at the use of the LRE's Internal Service Fund to help deal with this now. I'm going to be quite busy. So this is not a stunt by providers to say, I'll just tell them that. I've looked at the books. I've had conversations. We've looked at the model. We had folks come to the podium today, 90-something-year-old dad, needs a place for this person to go. I have, however, said to my residential system that only placements for health and safety reasons now are being authorized. I can't just place people into vacancies at the moment just because, oh, look, it's open and finally I can get somebody in. We are prioritizing our placements based on health and safety, based on absolute health and safety criteria. So when you hear there are 2 new homes opening up somewhere or there, it's not like we're going, oh, good. Just put 7 people in. We know that causes at least a $700,000 increase annualized exposure to us when we do that, if you annualize that. So we're doing it carefully, doing it based on health and safety, keeping the region, and you'll get a comprehensive report on what I'm learning from these providers and what we need to do. So is it bad news, good news? It's the State of the Union. And we will solve it. We will do that. I will ensure that these individuals provide the services they're entitled to. And we cannot let providers go under. Now, if they have a model that's too expensive, we're talking about that. They're like, hey, can we do this in stages? We're talking about that. But I got to tell you, it went from verbalization to documentation. And so I'm meeting with the regional entity next week. I have a meeting set up with regional entity staff to go over this, because we're not the only CMH in the region experiences. This is region-wide. We have some providers are doing a cut to providers. Those providers, not all of them, some of them saying, well, I guess we're done then, because even a 5% cut, they can't even do. What is Network 180 supposed to do? They could cut their entire administrative apparatus and not even get to 1/3 of the deficit. They could fire every single employee that Network 180 has, and they don't even get close to half the deficit. It's a systemic problem. So I'm not saying that county's doing something wrong, but we can't cut at this state. We're already at the bone. So we got our work cut out for us, but we'll roll up the sleeves and do it. But I needed to bring that to your attention because that's a changing development that I did get official notification.
Michael, you're referring to Network 180's announcement that they're going to do a 5% across the board reduction in rates?
Yeah. Especially specialized residential rates. It's not all rates. Mm-hmm. To me, and this is not a criticism on them, folks that are getting self-directed care at home with CLS supports coming to them is almost like the same level of care in a way, and our residential providers are some of, not all, are most vulnerable. Our ACT folks are most vulnerable, right? And the MI side and those things, right? We have to ensure the most vulnerable are prioritized in terms of the resources that we have. That's like everybody, right? But yes, I'm referring to that, and we're looking at a system-wide impact of that. But what I'm saying is, we've arrived. It's at our doorstep. It's no longer do this or else. It's formal notices. We will be out of cash reserves in this organization. We had an organization do a fundraiser, raised money, and it didn't even cover the cost of their deficit every month. Their annual raise money because we're not paying enough gala, right? And what they raised was quite substantial, didn't even cover the amount they're in deficit every single month based on the escalating increases of staff costing, which is the primary driver of this. It's gone from $8 an hour to 20-something bucks an hour in a matter of less than a decade, with not proportional growth in the rates. That's why we're here. And this is not just for them. Our folks in self-directed care, families trying to piece this together around the clock, same issue. So we're here. Let the board know we're working on it. We're developing an action plan, an impact analysis, and the steps to do this to prevent a catastrophic decrease in our capacity. There's nowhere to put 30 people, 10 people, right?
Well, I think it's really interesting that, earlier today, it was stated that the county used to provide direct residential care.
Right.
It just highlights the point that this is our responsibility.
Darn right.
Because if we don't have them, somehow we still have to provide this. So we can't just let it fold.
Right. And remember, I'm saying it all the time because I want this like in your soul. Our providers are us.
Mhm.
We're choosing that methodology to deliver the service that we're obligated to provide. So they're not this little we'll just reduce the contract. It's like reducing our own. And I view it identical. If staff get a 3% increase, provider network should get a 3% increase. They're linked. That has not been the case for at least 13 years. So a lot of challenges, but this is what we do. We solve these issues to ensure the people we're obligated to serve have the services. That's why we exist. And the public system can't replicate it. Not even close. Not even close. So all this talk about rearranging, good luck. Who wants to manage a system that's not funded right? I don't know why they're lining up to do it, unless I don't know something. But that concludes my report, unless there are further questions. It's lengthy, but it's a lot of education, a lot of issues. We had the annual report. And I hope that people don't leave like discouraged. We will find solutions. This is what we do.
I guess I just have one comment on that. And that is, I feel like when we have an issue like this is really a community issue.
Mhm.
We, as a board, have a responsibility, our county has a responsibility, but, as a broader community here in Ottawa County, we're taking care of our most vulnerable.
Mhm.
And so I hope that this need is actually going out beyond just governmental
Oh, yeah.
circles, because there are a lot of resources in this county that, pour money into nonprofits and help in different special interest groups. And, these are real needs for our most vulnerable. So I'm hoping that some of those other, organizations are also hearing about these needs.
Yes.
Because I would love to see them step in and help.
Yes, for sure. And welcomed
Mhm.
and needed.
Right.
I don't mean this to be a silly question, but just like around this board here, we have family members, consumers. I have to believe at the state level, there's people like us talking to Elizabeth. Like 91-year-old man, that breaks my heart.
Right.
He's not the only one.
Right.
So are there not consumers and people sitting on boards with Elizabeth to say,
Mhm.
this is really real, Elizabeth? There's a huge problem. These numbers that you're giving to us, how can she not take that seriously? So my question is, are there consumers, family members sitting on whatever
I
board
think-
it is at the state level? I don't know if they call them.
If I had to guess, Director Hartel gets that information. And she has that feedback. And a lot of the folks in the department that I talked to that are below that level understand the issue. It's about making change. And so I can't tell you why we're sitting here.
It sounds to me it's kind of like she's not really affected in any way, but everybody else is. That's how
I agree.
more than anything, because she doesn't. It feels like
But she's not impacted
she's
by it.
not really impacted. She doesn't have people that are near her who are impacted.
Yeah,
by
there may be variables that we're all unaware of. We just need to
Yeah.
know what they are,
Yeah.
what the plan is. But there's actually no partnership to speak of right now with Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and the CMH system, which is a part of them.
Right.
Just like providers are part of us, we are them per the mental health code. We are the vehicle for that department to meet its obligation. What's reported by the PHPs, the regions, and the CMHs, there is literally no active dialogue and partnership in the important areas. We get your check, we'll check on it, get back to you. There are really good people that work there, trust me. We don't have sit downs like we used to and map out the system as a group. They have forgotten that we are them. But guess what? There's this little pesky thing called the mental health code. They can't just eliminate it. So I don't know what the motivation is, but I'll be darned to keep not telling them. And we have, this county calls people. Yeah, I say call people, they do. We had over 100 calls going, legislators like, easy, yeah, okay, call different people now, right? But I don't know the answer. All I know is I'm invested in the solution. And it's going to be quite clear to the residents of Michigan, the impact of allowing us to have a deficit is going to have on its citizens. That is a campaign that we're all banding together on developing so people know what's at stake. Because people just think we're like a health plan, like, oh, we'll just get somebody else to do it. No one does half the things I showed you today. We're it. So who's going to do it? Who are you going to call Friday night? You're not calling Priority Health? Say that right now. It's us. So
And to what you said earlier in the meeting, you've been doing this for 30 whatever years. I've only been on this board for 2 years, but I've lived in this life for 33 years with my son. I've been on this board for 2 years, guys. I still don't even understand what CCBHC is. I don't get it. I do not get
I was looking for the clinic when I first
So
walked in. I
it's
get it.
never been well explained. I'm sorry, I have a mental health block, I guess, but I don't get it. So when you say like, we got to make a choice, like that's an easy one for me because
Right.
I don't even understand what it's doing.
Yeah, and that's why we have to do it informed. We'll get more targeted. Like when I first did the CCBHC presentation, it was like this high, right? Now I'm like, holy crap, we are the CCBHC. It's not like a separate thing before. I've had to understand it, but I'll tell you, I'm learning it. I'm learning it pretty good. And I will tell you, we have a decision to make. And I'm going to outline the pros and cons, and the community, this board of county commissioners will make a decision. And whatever the decision is, we're going to solve it, and we're going to keep doing what we're doing. But to your point, we're trying to figure it out all the time still. We think we're in the work groups. Oh, it's that, not that. The state's like, yeah, let me get back to you. Everybody's figuring it out. So I don't know if you want to move to the next item or. Sure. That'd be new business, right? So the only service contract we have is for the Raymond Group. And it's to do what I outlined earlier. In addition to some targeted consultation, we're going to engage in a contract that after they're done with the initial kind of evaluation and stuff, they'll give us a report, we'll go through it. They're going to be available monthly for Amy or anybody in the county to get input on the ever-changing CMH funding complexity. And because they're involved in many different layers of the system, they're the best source, in my opinion, to ask, because they're dealing with counties that are also county department. There are also PHPs or regions that are also CMHs without it. And they're involved in all the state discussions when it comes to the financial models and reporting. So I'm asking approval for this particular contract to provide consultation and services for us to help understand what we do, stabilize what we do, and continue our education process by a third party. That's what this is.
Would someone like to make a motion?
So move.
Any further discussion? Should we call the question with the roll call?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you for that. It's going to really help us. Okay. All right. Tom, you want to send us to the next thing?
Yes, please.
Okay. This is Amy's up. I gotta step out for just a moment.
Hi there. So I don't know if you want to introduce a motion or.
Yes, let's do that. Would someone like to make a motion?
Motion.
Second.
We'll allow you to make a presentation before questions.
Okay, so I'm presenting the year-to-date financial statement of activities for the mental health and the mental health SUD and the millage and grants funds through April of this fiscal year, April 30 of this fiscal year. Mental health SUD fund, Dr. Brashears kind of went into this at length with detail. We have that pending budget adjustment that we're still reviewing, but current through May 15th, we were net at a $1.99 million deficit, projecting ongoing, kind of in line with our trajectory. I think, that was an increase in our net position or increase in our deficit position over last year or last month. Partly due to the fact that we ran the report on the 15th and received some payments right after from the LRE, but still pending projections for a deficit within that fund that we're working out the details for that you've heard. Millage and Grants Fund, right on target for through April with our expenditures to budget. Any questions or comments on that?
So in working through things with the LRE, when do you expect again to know that?
So we have a meeting on Tuesday of next week, and we are in conversation also with MDHHS. Part of our delay has been this costing for CCBHC, kind of closing the fiscal year 24, understanding all the implications, making a decision on those implications. So we're meeting with a consultant, the state, and I don't have an exact timeline. I know that sooner rather than later, in general, that reporting is due by the end of May, typically, unless we receive an extension beyond that. So it really depends. We're kind of, we've got scenarios drafted, and we just need to have decision points established so that we can finalize that decision, so we know which documents to present as the finals and have a cash settlement for that at that point. So I would say we'll have a much better sense in a month. But, that May deadline probably gives us a target for resolving some of those decisions at least.
Okay.
Would be my hope anyway. I'm ready to close it. But we'll see.
Me too.
Any other questions about the financial reports? Should we call the question with a roll call vote?
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion carries. For general information, comments, and meetings attended, any of the board members have anything to offer here?
I do, yeah. So I had the pleasure of attending two different things over the past month. One was to the Momentum Center, and they had a very informative discussion about housing within the area. I wasn't able to attend the whole thing because of a media conflict, but I did really appreciate the discussions that were going on there. And also, a couple of days ago, Michael and I had attended a ribbon cutting ceremony at the new Southridge Behavioral Health Center, which is a new inpatient facility in Byron Center. It's 98 beds that are going to be opening up. They're going to start admitting in June, which should ease up some of the problems with the ED boarding that happens across the state of Michigan. They're also in, they have an arrangement with Trinity Health St. Mary's Hospital in Grand Rapids that is opening up additional med psych beds. So those that are having like complications with a physical health issue along with a psychiatric issue, it should open up some beds there as well too. So it's really good news within our area, within our region here as well too.
Anyone else have anything to report? I should give you an update on the committee assignments, just in case you have not received an email. The Finance Committee, actually for both committees, we were oversubscribed with people volunteering. So that's a good position to be in. You're commended for volunteering. Finance Committee will be Sylvia, Bob, Vonnie, Donna, and me. And the first meeting for the Finance Committee will be June 23rd. That's the Monday preceding our next board meeting from 3 to 5 at the James Street office. The PQI committee will be Peggy, Paul, Bob, Bonnie, and me. And their first meeting will be June 9th, 3 to 5 p.m. at James Street. The other thing is Michael's review will be coming up at his first anniversary. My understanding is the executive committee is charged with doing a review, and we'll be making plans on doing that during the month of August, and look for input from any of the board members in that process. Anything else from the board? Any additional public comment? No one else? Oh, I'm sorry. Rosalie.
Rosalie Austin, City of Holland. It's good to hear about the new psych beds coming online, but I hope they're inclusive of the IDD population and can meet some of those needs too, because as it stands, it's hard enough to get a psych bed, but if you mention autism or IDD, you're pretty much stuck without. So
Anyone else care to comment? Anyone online? Nope. That being the case, unless anyone objects, we will adjourn.